927. Adding and subtracting fractions. Solve and simplify each one. These are the sorts of problems that you'll be expected to do tomorrow, Thursday's proficiency check. First up, 1/3 minus 1/5. We cannot subtract directly because the denominators are different. So we will multiply this first fraction by 5 and the second fraction by 3. This gives us 5 over 15 minus 3 over 15. We subtract straight across, and our final answer is 2/15. Moving to the right, 1/2 plus 2/4. I notice that my first denominator can be doubled, and now I get 2 over 4 plus 2 over 4. Same denominator, so I can add straight across. 4 over 4, which simplifies to just 1. Same trick for the next one. I can double the first fraction, giving myself 4 over 8. And when I subtract 4 over 8, this gives me 0 over 8, which simplifies to just 0. On over to the right. Now I have options here. I could simply multiply each fraction by the other denominator, so 7/10 multiplied by 4, and 2/4 multiplied by 10. That would work, though it would make my denominator 40. Another option is to look for the least common multiple. The least common multiple is a number that both 10 and 4 multiply into, and the smallest possible number that can do so. It turns out that 20 is that number. If I double this first fraction and multiply the second fraction by 5, here's my new fractions. 14 over 20 plus 10 over 20. And this gives me 24 over 20. You may notice that these are both even numbers, so I could divide by 2. You may also notice that they both have factors 4, so I could start from there. And this would give me 6 over 5. That's in the lowest form. Of course, if you're not very experienced with least common multiples, we can still instead just multiply this entire first fraction by 4 and the second one by 10. This gives us 28 over 40, and then 20 over 40, or in other words, 48 over 40. And you may notice that these are both even numbers, but they also have a factor of 8, which turns out to be 6/5. That's the same answer, just using a different technique. On to the back, now we're dealing with 3 fractions at a time. So remember, we're only concerned with the denominator. 5, 3, and 3 are not the same. What is the least common multiple of these? It's 15. Let's convert the fractions into 15ths. 4/5 is tripled. I get 12 over 15. 2/3 I multiply by 5, and I get 10 over 15. 1/3 I multiply by 5, and I get 5 over 15. I add straight across the top, and I get 27 over 15. You may notice both of these have a factor of 3. My new fraction becomes 9/5. The second problem here, I'm looking for the least common multiple between 10, 5, and 5, and that's just 10. So I can leave the first fraction as it is, 8/10, and then the next fraction I'm going to double. So the 1 becomes a 2, and the 5 becomes a 10. Same with the last. And I subtract straight across the top. 8 minus 2 is 6, minus 2 is 4 over 10. These are both even numbers, which is a pretty good clue that I can simplify this. This gives me 2/5. That's the final answer. So what is the least common multiple between 4, 5, and 10? Well, let's start with the biggest number, 10, and ask ourselves, does 5 multiply into 10? Yes, 5 times 2 is 10. What about 4? 4 times 2 is 8, and 4 times 3 is 12, so no. Let's go back to the biggest number, 10. and multiply by 2. Now we're looking at 20. Does 5 multiply into 20? Yes, 5 times 4 is 20. Does 4 multiply into 20? Yes. We have found our least common multiple. So we're going to change each fraction to become 20ths. 1/4 is multiplied by 5 to get 5 over 20. 2/5 is multiplied by 4 to get 8 over 20. And 1/10 is multiplied by 2 to get 2 over 20. I add the numerator straight across, and I get 15 over 20. If I divide both by 5, I would get 3/4. Let's try that least common multiple technique one more time. So I start off with 10. 3 does not multiply into 10. So let's try 10 times 2, 20. 3 does not multiply into 20. So let's try 10 times 3, 30. I'm choosing 10 because it's the largest number. 3 goes into 30, and 5 goes into 30 as well. I'm going to convert all three fractions into 30ths. 9/10, I'm going to triple, and this becomes 27 divided by 30. 1/3, I'm going to multiply by 10, and this becomes 10 over 30. 1/5, I'm going to multiply by 6, and this becomes 6 over 30. If I subtract straight across, I get 11 over 30. One final example to make sure we get this. My denominators are 3, 2, and 5. I'll begin with the largest denominator. So 5 times 1 is 5. Does 2 multiply into 5? No. So how about 5 times 2? That's 10. Does 2 multiply into 10? Yes. Does 3? No. So let's try 5 times 3. 15. 2 does not multiply into 15. Let's try 5 times 4. 20. Well, 3 does not multiply evenly into 20. So let's try 5 times 5. 25. Again, 3 does not work. What about 5 times 6? 30. And this is my least common multiple, because 2 times 15 is 30 and 3 times 10 is 30. So I have the lowest possible multiple, which means 2/3 is going to be multiplied by 10 to give me 20 30ths. 1/2 is going to be multiplied by 15 to give me 15 30ths. And 3/5 is going to be multiplied by 6 to give me 18 30ths. If I add the numerator straight across, I will get 53 over 30, which cannot be reduced.